Today we're going to be talking about section 7.3, which discusses the term stoichiometry. And the title of that particular section is the mole concept in balanced equations. Okay, so this video is going to be an introduction to the idea of how we use a balanced equation in order to determine the amounts of things that are reacting. And we're going to start with an analogy of gives you a similar idea to a chemical equation, in that a chemical equation is like a recipe for the formation of a particular compound. Okay, so we are covering 187 to page 190 is the section that this first video introduces you to, and later videos cover more in depth what's on those pages. Okay, so our idea is that a chemical reaction is similar to a recipe. So what's our analogy? Our analogy is we're going to make some sandwiches, okay? So we're going to say, all right, I want to make a sandwich, and I have a particular style of sandwich that I like. Okay, and in my sandwich, I like 2 slices of bread, I like 3 slices of meat, and 1 slice of cheese. Okay, that's my sandwich that I like to make. That's a pretty boring sandwich. Okay, but that's the way I like it. Okay, so if I look at that, that's going to make, this makes 1 sandwich. All right, so funny thing is I can take that and write, that's my recipe for my sandwich, right? So let's write this in a weird way that we don't usually write recipes. We're going to say that I have 2 bread, that's my 2 slices of bread, plus 3 slices of meat, plus 1 slice of cheese, and that equals 1 sandwich. And I can even go so far to relate this to what we're going to talk about, is that my sandwich has the equation B2 M3 C. That's my 2 slices of bread, my 3 slices of meat, and 1 slice of cheese, and it's all in one compound, and that compound is my sandwich. Okay, so that I know that when I make a sandwich, I like always this same ratio of things that I like to make my sandwich in. 2 bread, 3 meat, 1 cheese, that makes my 1 sandwich. Okay. All right, so if I take that and say I've got a friend over and I want to make them a sandwich, right? So I essentially can take my recipe and double my recipe, right? I need 2 sandwiches, so I need 2 of these guys. All right, so what does that mean? Well, I need to take my entire amount of things that I make my sandwiches out of, and I need to multiply it by 2, right? I need 2 times this many to make 2 times this many. Okay. So I can go through and I say, okay, in that case, I need 4 bread plus 6 slices of meat for the 2 sandwiches, plus 2 slices of cheese, and that's going to give me 2 of my sandwiches. Okay, so I just doubled my recipe, essentially. Twice the amount of everything in order to make twice as many sandwiches. Okay. All right, so, but I see that the ratio that I need doesn't change. So if I look up here at my original equation, this guy, that I needed 2 slices of bread for every 1 slice of cheese. So the ratio is 2 breads to 1 cheese. And that didn't change when, of course, when I multiplied it by 2, the ratio stays the same. Now I need 4 slices of bread, twice as many as I did before, but I also need twice as many cheese. So the ratio of bread to cheese is I need 2 bread to 1 cheese. Or another way to write that is I could say 2 bread over 1 cheese. And that's the ratio. This right here is the ratio that I need. And I can do that for each thing in there. 2 bread and 1 cheese, or I can say 2 bread and 3 meat. The ratio is always going to stay the same, no matter how many sandwiches that I'm making. It's always going to be the fixed ratio if I'm going to make them all the same. Okay. All right, so we make our sandwiches for our friend. We need the amounts that we showed before: 4 bread, 6 meat, 2 cheese to make 2 sandwiches. All right, so now I've got a bunch of people coming over. I'm having a party, and I want to make a dozen sandwiches. Okay, so I look at my recipe for my sandwich, and again, it's going to be, whoops. It's going to be 2 bread plus 3 meat plus 1 cheese. And that's going to give me 1 sandwich. We'll call it S. Okay. So now I need to make a dozen of these guys. So I need a dozen sandwiches. So how do I figure out how much I need of each of my components of those sandwiches? Okay, so now we want to know how many of each component that I need. Well, I can take the entire thing just like we did before. And in this case, I want a dozen, so I'm going to multiply everything by 12. Okay, so I need 24 slices of bread plus 36 slices of meat plus 12 cheese, and that's going to give me 12 sandwiches. All right, I took the whole thing and multiplied it by 12. Okay, so now I have each of those components and how much I need of each. Okay, so I could also say, okay, well, look at this. This is 24, that's 2 dozen. So really I need 2 dozen bread slices plus 3 dozen meat plus 1 dozen cheese, and that gives me 1 dozen sandwiches. Okay. So if I look at it this way, I've written it now as dozens of things. So an amount, 12 of each, 12 in a dozen, right? So look at the coefficients that I've written. I need 2, 3 dozen, 1 dozen to make 1 dozen. Those coefficients are the same as the coefficients of my original recipe, except for now I'm making a dozen of them. Okay, so I made considerably more, but the ratio that I made between each is the same. Okay, so just like we talked about here, for every 2 slices of bread, I need 1 cheese. Okay, ratio is 2 breads to 1 cheese, or 2 bread to 3 meat. In this case, I'm making now a dozen, right? So if I have 2 dozen bread, I'm going to need a dozen cheese. Okay, so 2 dozen bread, I need a dozen cheese. For 2 dozen bread, I'm going to need 3 dozen meat. Okay. So the ratio that I'm using doesn't change. The recipe tells me how much I need, and that's what I'm going to use. Now we can extend this crazy idea all the way down, or this idea, to a crazy amount of sandwiches, right? So if I said I wanted 1 mole of sandwiches, it's just a number of sandwiches, right? We know the number, 6 times 10 to the 23rd sandwiches. Okay, but it comes out to be a mole, just like a dozen. So instead of having what we did here, which was 1 dozen sandwiches, we're gonna have 1 mole of sandwiches. So now I wanna know how many of the different components do I need? Okay, well, one way we can look at it is we can say, well, let's look at our equation that we've got, which is up here, and it stays the same. So for every 2 bread, I need 3 meat and 1 cheese, and that makes 1 sandwich. Right? So if I had 2 dozen bread, I'm going to need 3 dozen meat, 1 dozen cheese, to make 1 dozen sandwiches. So the ratio is going to stay the same. And now I'm making 1 mole of sandwiches. So the ratio is 1 sandwich is equal to 2 bread. 1 sandwich is equal to 3 meat. 1 sandwich is equal to 1 cheese. Okay, those ratios stay the same. So I can also say, well, if they stay the same, then 1 mole of sandwich equals 2 mole bread that I need equals 3 mole meat equals 1 mole of cheese. Right? I still need those same ratios, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 1. Okay, I just have a lot more of them. So if I wanted to make the sandwiches that I'm discussing, we said that if I need mole of sandwiches, then I need this many breads, this many cheeses, this many meats. Okay. What if I have some odd number? So I want to make 4 moles of sandwiches. So what I write down is I've got 4 mole sandwiches. Okay, and I want to figure out how many moles of bread do I need? Well, I can look at this ratio, right? All right, for every 1 mole of sandwiches, I need 2 moles of bread. I need twice as many. So how do I write that in an equation to tell me, in this case, if I have 4 moles of sandwiches, I need twice as many slices of bread. I need 8. Okay, but how do I write that out in a mathematical expression? So 4 moles of sandwiches, I use the ratio of my moles of bread to my moles of sandwich. Okay, so I take 1 mole of sandwiches, and that's what I'm going to try to cancel out, right? Because I want to know how many moles of bread I need. So it's going to go in the denominator, just like we've been canceling things out. Whenever we want to get rid of those units, and this is a unit, we put it into the denominator. And in the numerator, it's what we're looking for. We're looking for how many slices of bread do I need? Okay, so I put 2 mole of bread. All right, so that is, right there is my ratio of bread to sandwiches in this case. I'm wondering how many sandwiches, or if I make this many sandwiches, how much bread I need. So now I can just multiply that out. And I say that I can cross out moles of sandwich and then take my coefficients, 4, multiply it by 2, and then my new unit is moles of bread that I need. Okay, so this then comes to be 8 moles of bread. So if I want some different amount of sandwiches, I can take the number of sandwiches I want, multiply it by the ratio of whatever unit I want to the other thing, to the sandwich, cancel out the units that I don't care about, and then I'm in the units that I do care about. Okay, so 4 moles of sandwiches, I need 8 moles of bread. So let's say if I've got 4 moles, I want to make 4 moles of sandwiches. I want to know how much meat do I need? I take my ratio, which is now here. So for every 1 mole of sandwiches, I need 3 moles of meat. And I use that same ratio. 1 mole sandwich, or sorry, a different ratio, same idea. 1 mole of sandwich to every 3 mole of meat. Now I cancel out moles sandwich and I multiply it and I get 12 moles of meat. Okay, so we're using the idea that we've got this recipe. Oops, that's not it. This recipe right here. Okay, the coefficients in that recipe are telling me how much I need. Whoops, I don't know why that's not disappearing. Telling me how much I need of each. And then if I'm given some strange amount of those things, you know, if I want to make 7 sandwiches, I can then use the ratio. And in this case, we're talking about moles, but here we were just talking about making sandwiches, and it's the same ratios. So if I make 7 sandwiches, I know that I'm going to need twice as many slices of bread. All right, so we can do that in our head. We can say 7 times 2, I need 14 slices. But we want to get used to writing it out as a mathematical expression. That way, when we're given a number that's not round, it's some, you know, decimal point, we can use that to figure out how much we need of the other thing in order to react completely when we get to the chemistry part. Okay, so that's our introduction to the idea of what we call a mole-to-mole ratio.